Sometimes the thing that unsettles you the most isn't what's happening around you, it's what's happening inside your own mind. That quiet sense that something about you doesn't fully make sense. Like you're watching yourself think, watching yourself feel, but never quite landing on what any of it actually means. You notice your thoughts forming, you notice your reactions happening, and at the same time, you're slightly removed from them. Almost like you're both the person living your life and the person observing it from a distance. And the more you try to understand it, the more it slips. There's a kind of awareness that doesn't bring clarity. It just makes everything feel less solid, less certain, less grounded. And once you notice it, you can't really go back to not noticing. It follows you into quiet moments, into conversations, into the spaces where nothing is happening, but your mind still is. There's a writer named Fernando Pessoa, and his life feels less like a biography and more like a reflection of this exact experience. He lived quietly, worked ordinary jobs, stayed mostly unnoticed, but internally his mind was constantly active, thinking, observing, writing, not occasionally, but almost continuously. By the time he died, almost no one knew who he really was. No recognition, no real audience, no validation that what he was doing mattered. But here's where it becomes strange. After his death, a wooden trunk was found. Inside it, tens of thousands of pages he had written, fragments of thoughts, observations, pieces of a mind that never stopped moving. And those writings would later become the Book of Disquiet, a book that doesn't read like a book. It feels like being inside someone's internal world without any filter, almost like reading something that wasn't meant to be explained, just experienced. There's no real storyline, no clear direction, no satisfying resolution, just fragments, thoughts that start but don't always finish, observations that feel complete and incomplete at the same time. You could read it from beginning to end, or open it randomly, and it would still feel the same, because it's not trying to guide you somewhere. It's showing you what it feels like to exist inside a mind that keeps moving without ever fully settling. And if you've ever sat alone, thinking longer than you meant to, letting one thought quietly turn into another, you start to recognize it, not as something new, but as something you've already experienced, something that didn't have words before, but suddenly does. Pessoa didn't just write as himself. He created multiple identities, different personalities, different ways of thinking, different perspectives on reality. Not just pen names, but fully developed inner voices, each one with its own beliefs, its own tone, its own way of seeing the world. And when you step back and look at that, it doesn't feel that unfamiliar, because if you really pay attention, you don't feel like one fixed person either. You shift, depending on the situation, depending on your mood, depending on what you're thinking about. There's the version of you that's calm, the version that overthinks, the version that avoids, the version that questions everything. And sometimes, those versions don't fully agree with each other. And the more aware you are of those shifts, the harder it is to believe there's just one you. It starts to feel fragmented. Not broken, just not singular. There's a certain kind of internal experience that's hard to describe. Not because it's not there, but because it doesn't organize itself clearly. You think constantly, but your thoughts don't always connect. You feel deeply, but can't always explain what you're feeling. It's like your inner world is active, but not structured. Like everything is moving, but not landing anywhere. And when you try to explain it to someone, it falls apart. The words don't match the feeling. The explanation feels incomplete. Like you're trying to describe something that keeps shifting as you look at it. So, eventually, you stop trying. Not because you don't want to be understood, but because translating it feels impossible. If this feels familiar, not just interesting, but a little too accurate, pause for a second. Because this isn't something everyone experiences. And noticing it already means your awareness is working differently. So I'm curious, have you ever felt like you're observing your own thoughts instead of just being inside them? Or like you're slightly removed from your own life? Drop a comment. I read every single one, and I want to see how many people actually relate to this. Because most people won't say it out loud, but they feel it. At some point, it turns into a loop. You try to understand yourself. Then you analyze that understanding. Then you question if that analysis is even accurate. And suddenly, you're thinking about your thinking. Over and over. Every answer leads to more questions. Every insight opens another layer. And instead of clarity, you get complexity. You start noticing patterns in yourself, then questioning those patterns, then wondering if you're overanalyzing them. And the hardest part is you can't just stop, because once your mind gets used to observing itself, it keeps doing it automatically, even when you're tired of it, even when you want silence. There's also a shift that happens quietly. Things that used to feel solid start to feel temporary. Achievements, conversations, emotions, they all pass. And when you become aware of how quickly everything changes, it becomes harder to hold on to meaning the same way. It's not that life feels completely meaningless. It's more subtle than that. It just feels less permanent, less fixed. Like everything is happening, but also fading at the same time. And that awareness can make you pause, not out of sadness, but out of uncertainty. Here's the strange part. Even when you start questioning the meaning of everything, you don't stop thinking. You don't stop reflecting. You don't stop trying to understand. There's a contradiction there. Part of you sees the pointlessness. Another part keeps searching anyway. You analyze things, even when you're not sure it leads anywhere. You reflect, even when you know it won't give you final answers. And that tension, that's the experience. Not something to fix, just something that exists. Over time, this creates a kind of distance. Not because you don't care about people, but because it's hard to explain what's happening inside you. Most conversations stay simple, direct, clear, surface level. But your mind doesn't stay there. It goes deeper, connects things, questions things. So you end up feeling slightly out of sync, like you're part of the conversation, but also observing it from the outside. And eventually, you stop trying to explain everything, because it's easier to stay quiet than to feel misunderstood. And yet, you keep thinking, you keep observing, you keep trying to understand. Not because it guarantees clarity, but because it's how your mind naturally works. You don't choose to process things this way. It just happens. And maybe that's the part that's worth noticing. This isn't a flaw. It's not something you're doing wrong. It's just a certain kind of awareness. There's something relieving about realizing this, that this experience has existed before, that someone else lived it and managed to put parts of it into words. Even if those words don't fully explain it, they reflect it. And sometimes, being reflected is enough, not to solve anything, but to feel less alone in it. Most people think clarity means having answers, but sometimes clarity is just recognizing the pattern, seeing how your mind works without needing to fully resolve it, understanding that confusion doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it just means you're paying attention, more than most people do. You might not ever fully understand yourself, not completely, not in a clean, simple way. And maybe that's not something to fix. Maybe the goal isn't to figure everything out. Maybe it's just to notice, to observe your thoughts without trying to control every single one, to let your mind be complex without turning it into a problem. And if this kind of experience feels familiar, there's a lot more to unpack here. So if you want more videos like this, that put words to things you've felt but couldn't explain, consider subscribing. Because we're going to keep exploring these patterns slowly, honestly, and without overcomplicating them. And over time, things don't necessarily become simpler, but they do start to make a little more sense.